I don't either, man. But man, let's talk about your Dolphins. Because we talk a lot of football, like on the side. And shit, man, you haven't been on the podcast since Black Men in Quarantine. Talking
Yep.
about like handsome Squidward when I was bald.
Yeah. What a time.
So your Dolphins. I mean, it's a lot going on down there. You fire your coach after back-to-back winning seasons, who is now suing the league. The same coach alleged that your owner tried to pay him $100,000 per loss to lose games in order to get Tua Tagovailoa. You end up with Tua at 5. Anyways, although y'all definitely could have lost some other games, and not even just like for the pay, just season's over, you lose your last 2 games. I think one of those games was to Cincinnati. You pick first, and maybe you have where are my glasses at? I can't find my glasses, but you have Joe Cool.
Yeah.
And I think Brian Flores, for better or for worse, did the nice PR run. Hey, we wanted to trade all 3 of our first round picks to move up to get Burrow. Cincy said no. Smart move, Cincy. And he also said I wanted to take Justin Herbert. Hindsight is 2020. Just like Hugh said, Hugh co-signed that he was getting offered to lose, paid to lose games. And Hugh also came out and said he wanted Deshaun Watson, and he could not get them. I firmly believe that Brian Flores, after they did their evaluation, did not want Tua, but his owner was so smitten with Tua, and he was just stuck.
Yeah, I feel like the Dolphin situation is a cautionary tale across the league of owners overstepping or understepping in a way. I think that at some points Stephen Ross has been heavy-handed. At other points, he's kind of left the boys to be the boys. With Greer and with Chris Greer, the GM, and Brian Flores, and I think that relationship was symbiotic for a very long time, in spite of some of the habits. I think that the complaint is that Brian Flores was abrasive, and that's what wore out his welcome more so than anything. The narrative around it is that Chris Greer gave Brian Flores really everything that he wanted aside from emptying out the cupboard the first year. Sure, I didn't give you much to play with. We really had an intention on this year that we want to rebuild, retool, do all of those different things. And sorry for that. Moving forward, I'll be completely transparent with you. And that's kind of what we saw. Brian Flores got to get any Patriot that cleared the waiver wire, anybody that had ever seen the Gillette Stadium, and I think that eventually he wore out his welcome just by all the turnover with staff, wanting more and more from Greer, maybe more autonomy. There was a report there. But I say all that to say that I think that Brian Flores exemplified really good leadership, throughout his whole time with the Dolphins. Minus one incident that I never really liked was the Kenny Stills situation. And for folks that aren't familiar, Kenny Stills' response to Jay-Z's "We're not kneeling anymore" Kaepernick comment. And then Brian Flores proceeds to play nothing but Jay-Z songs in the practice facility the following day. A gangster moment, but I could see how that would piss off players that don't like to be one-upped or shown up by their coach. Most of the coaches don't care about the music that's playing.
But I think even though I didn't like it either, I think Flores had a great response to it. Was like, hey, yeah, I'm doing this because it's going to piss you off, and you still have to control yourself, and it's just a mind game, right? And I feel like something like that would happen in New England. It just wouldn't get out. And the problem is with these New England coaches, and this is not my own personal take. I got this from Michael Lombardi, who worked with Bill Belichick in Cleveland and New England. You got to bring in New England guys. Like I think McDaniels is going to work in Oakland because he's bringing his own GM. You can't try to convert people into the Belichick way of football because it only happens that way in New England. It doesn't happen like that anywhere else. And trying to get people to do things your way when you're not Bill Belichick and they are used to doing it a certain way, which I feel like 90% of the league operates one way. And then you have your Belichick's, probably like your Andy Reids, who do things a specific way. And they're allowed to do that. And I think that's what hurt Flores. Also, hiring Chan Gailey as an offensive coordinator was just a bad hire.
So I'm going to disagree. I mean, our yards per play were better than they've ever been, really, since the last time he was with the Dolphins. And that's the thing. I think that there was a misconception about what the offense could and couldn't do. And I think that it was as good as it had been at that point. Shout out to Omar Kelly, who gave me that information via Twitter, Miami beat writer. And so, I think that the offense, name the last time that the Dolphins had a running game outside of Jay Ajayi's few breakout games within him getting hurt. And it's really hard.
Cartersville's finest.
Exactly. You're talking Ronnie Brown.
Yeah.
I looked him up the other day out of Auburn. And, it's a wild time to think that like Ricky Williams and Ronnie Brown, a number 2 overall pick, which people forget a lot of the time, that's the last time that we had a legitimate running game. And we were still bragging about 4 yards per carry when Brandon Jacobs was falling forward for 6 yards. And, that was the time in the league. And I think that we just have never had a running game. And I think that contributes to where we're at. I'm frustrated with the team as a fan. I would have preferred to have Flores one more year at least. I don't think that he should have been to that point. I think that, no disrespect to Chris Greer, maybe continuity is good there, and maybe Ross really trusts him. But the same guy that drafted Deion Jordan, number 3, and traded picks for him, doesn't get to continue making these mistakes with my folks. Like a winning coach, the first time we've had a winning season, back-to-back in a long time.
I remember that maybe?
Yeah. And the thing is, Dave Wanstead was too good at going 8-8 and 9-7. He had like 110-6 a year at one point, and I think we made the playoffs, and that was the last time, or before Tannehill flukes out that year and gets hurt. Exactly. Just like it's all pain. It's all pain. And then the Ravens whooped their ass, and Ed Reed did his thing. But
Greer hire Adam Gase.
Yeah. Well, Ross did. Ross really liked him, but the problem was it was off of Peyton's word. Peyton came down to the facility and spoke good about him and and was like, you guys got to hire him. And I mean, we made the playoffs the first year, so it looked like it was legit. And then it just felt like somewhere out there it flamed out. And he was another dude that couldn't really build the right team, coaching staff to prop up the team. But we got to figure that out. But I'm intrigued by our new coach ultimately.
So yeah, you bring in Mike McDaniel, nice diversity hire by the Dolphins. People don't know Stephen Ross. He definitely put his money where his mouth was, behind the Black Lives Matter. He has a black GM. He had a black head coach in Brian Flores, and then, Mike McDaniel's one drop rule. So look, you can't call Stephen Ross a racist because he's putting his money where his mouth is, right?
Yeah. Until he throws his Trump parties. He had the thing in the Hamptons where it was like $1 million per plate or per seat at this fundraiser. And so it's like, there's obviously a divide. Like he is more conflicted than a whore in church. And I think that I don't really get it, and like his allegiances just feel really divisive. Like I really love my NFL team, but I won't take the coach that potentially wants to come to the NFL and pay him even when I need a coach and I fired him and it looks like I need a coach. There's so many of these situations where I just don't really understand it there. But with our new coach, I'm excited to see what McDaniel can bring. I really enjoyed watching there was an interview that Deebo Samuel does recently, right as he takes the job, and he just talks about how he turned him up. Deebo in 1 year does double what he had the production the prior 2 years, and so just seeing that and seeing his rushing, improvements, his rushing touchdowns, all of his yards per play, were just so impressive. And to hear someone be like, he's the guy that like really taught me and used me in the right ways, and we saw it on the field, and that's why they made made it to the conference championship ultimately, and almost made it to the Super Bowl. I love what he does by putting folks in motion, especially the linemen. You really see that. I think that he's going to turn us into a running team if we can get a running back, and he turned a rookie running back into arguably one of the best running backs in the league in 1 year's time. So big fan.
If we don't clog the conversation with the lack of true diversity hires in the NFL, I'm not mad at the hire. He's a guy coming from the Kyle Shanahan tree, and I prefer the Shanahan tree more than the McVay tree. Obviously, the McVay tree comes from the Shanahan tree, but I like the Shanahan tree a little bit more because they really care about running the ball. I think that McVay really wants to pass the ball, but he utilizes the run so that he can play action pass. But I think the Shanahan tree is committed to running the ball, period. You know what I mean? Like, and some of the creative stuff that they did there, which is why I push back on the Shan Gailey. Shan Gailey, for one, he was a retread in Miami. He's going to be holding on to some of the Dave Wanstead stuff because that's who he was there with. But also that he just plays an older form of football, which obviously you gave me the numbers that said it was more productive. But I think your new coach is definitely going to innovate the offense, and more importantly than y'all getting a good running back, he's going to scheme your running back to get yards.
I hope so. You know, I think that he can. The problem is the Dolphins have one of the worst O-lines in the league. You know, I think that we compete with Cincinnati, honestly, on just like having a really bad line. We've got some good converted left tackles that are now guards. You know, like Robert Hunt is one of those guys who's started to emerge. But I mean, we've spent probably 5 of our last, you know, for the first 3 rounds for the last 4 or 5 seasons, it's been all offensive linemen essentially. And Austin Jackson hasn't been the guy that we needed him to be, and we drafted him in the first round. And you know, we've had all of these picks, this war chest of picks, and the majority of them have gone to linemen, and we don't have much to show for it ultimately. So I don't know.
Chris Greer, you know, he's a guy making the picks. Real quick before we get out of here, Tua.
Tua's got to get stronger. Tua's got to get with like Russell Wilson's strength and conditioning coach or something like that. He definitely showed some more, physicality this year and showed like, you know, he was able to take a hit. He was way less fragile. I wasn't as worried about him this year as I was previous season. The thing that I'm just not seeing is the throw power. You know, like I don't see a guy with a cannon. And you know, I've gone back and watched footage at Bama, and they were perfectly precise passes. I think that we had an offense last year that tailored to his strengths, and it concerned me that, you know, it felt like there were some areas where he stepped back. And there was mostly things around confidence and pocket presence ultimately. And so I'm just worried that, like, you know, our offensive line woes are stunting his development. But, you know, this isn't a really strong class. I think that if Malik Wills, you know, a guy like that falls to us in the draft, I think you bring in some competition because Tua, you know, like deserves to have to be pushed by someone maybe that's not perfect, but a project. You know, and I think that makes me feel good. I'm glad to see our coach McDaniel get behind Tua and say that like he's going to try to squeeze everything out of him. I think that he can. Tua is going to be a phenomenal play action quarterback. That was his strength the first year under Chan Gailey. That I think that, you know, where he showed some strengths is what rolling out in the pocket. And so bringing a running coach in who's focused on that, I think it's just going to open lanes for him to do what he wants. I think that my concern is that you need to be able to push the ball downfield at some point. That's Russell Wilson's best strength. And he has the accuracy, but none of the power. And so what are you going to do with our weapons? Like we dink and dunked all last year. I think that we gave him arguably the best weapon that you can give someone outside of Jamar Chase that's young. And, you know, I mean, it's really on him. I do think that we need to rebuild our wide receiving core. I'd love to see my buddy come from Green Bay, come down to Miami and get paid too much. But
Vontae?
Yeah, why not?
Tua, why not? So with that, I think that if you can scheme a good play action game for Tua, with some shots down the field to Waddle, because Waddle does have that deep threat capability, I think you guys have a chance to really open up the offense. My biggest fear, though, is Tua's lack of confidence, Tua's lack of arm, and him having to be Drew Brees for y'all to compete at a high level, because that is such a high standard of what a quarterback needs to be. And I think that's what Tua's skill set is.
Tua reminds me a lot of now I'm forgetting his name. The quarterback that the Dolphins used to have that had who was it?
Chad Pennington or Jay Fiedler?
Chad Pennington. And, you know, he had no arm strength at all, nothing left in that shoulder, and found a way to just be really accurate. And I thought Tua's run that he had for that like 4-game stretch where we were winning and he was playing well and was back healthy reminded me a lot of that. Where it's like the ball only touches the ground 3 times when he's on the field, and he can be ridiculously accurate. He can beat people on slants. it's more about his precision and his decision making more than anything else. And I think that's the problem is that the league has changed and we need more from him there. And I think that he can show with accuracy and maybe in the right scheme, guys are going to get open because of the play action ultimately. And so I think he can expose that. But I think that if Tua's going to have a longer career, he's just got to get stronger. And I think that he shows a desire and a willingness to get bigger. And he did that last offseason. And if he keeps bulking up, I think he can get there. That report about Flores trying to test him is wild. I don't think that that's true, but that's neither here nor there.
Fair enough, man. Hey, Josh, thanks so much for coming on, dog.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. Definitely a pleasure.
All right, dog. I'll holler at you.
All right, hold it down, bro.